I saw a post the other day from someone saying that they had been trying to explain to their mom what it meant to be non-binary. And their mom eventually came back with, "Oh, so you're like a rosé." And I actually think that's pretty apt. And I'll explain why. If you already know about wine, I'm not going to say anything you don't already know. But if you don't know very much about winemaking, and you don't know how a rosé is made, this might be interesting in case you need to explain to your boozy Gen X mom what it means to be non-binary. So the basics of wine are that there are red wines and white wines, right? People know that. And the way that a red wine is made is you use purple red wine grapes. And the way that a white wine is made is you use green or yellow white wine grapes. But when you're using those grapes in winemaking, you don't use the same technique to make a white wine as you do a red wine. A red wine is made by juicing the grapes and leaving the skins in the juice for the first part of fermentation. And when you're making a white wine, you squeeze the grapes, remove the skins from the juice, and let the juice ferment on its own. But there are two other variations that you can make using red and white wine grapes by swapping the technique. And that's rosé and orange wine. An orange wine is made when you take white wine grapes, squeeze them, and leave the skins in for the first part of the ferment, just like you would for a red wine. And a rosé is made when you take red wine grapes, squeeze the juice out, and take the skins off, leaving behind a pinkish liquid that will then ferment on its own without the skins, and that's rosé. So that's not like a bad analogy, I think, for being non-binary. But you can get even fancier than that, because it still kinds of sounds like there's a binary, like you're just sort of taking the red grapes and the white grapes and like changing the method. Yeah, but which red grapes? Which white grapes? If you want to make a red wine, you need to use different techniques depending on what grape you're using. They might all be vinifera, but that does not mean that they're going to behave the same way during fermentation. A Cabernet Sauvignon grape is going to produce a very different flavor profile from a Pinot Noir grape. You need to treat them differently during the fermentation process. And the same is true of white wines. A Chardonnay grape needs to be handled differently than a Sauvignon Blanc grape. And if you want to get even weirder than that, we can talk about how you make champagne. There's a reason it's fancy. It's complicated. And while people will compare Prosecco and champagne, Prosecco is not just Italian champagne. It's a completely different method. And if you want to get real fancy, we can talk about Tokai. You have to actually cultivate a special kind of mold on the grapes while they're still on the vine. I have no idea what the gender equivalent of that would be. So yeah, on the surface, there's red wine and white wine. And that'll, get you by if you're not really that interested in wine. But when you're not really interested in something, you're not able to enjoy it to its full potential. And that might be fine for wine, but I think you maybe have a little more responsibility where human beings are concerned. Anyway, hope that helps you come out to your wine mom.